Ada County Paramount.
All right, what's going on? Welcome back, Idaho Sports Talk. This is hour number 2 as our coverage of day 2 of Mountain West Media Days continues. We're Prater in the ball game. Got a fun hour. We'll even give you a chance to win $50 to Biscuit and Hogs during Rock Jocks and Pop Culture. But first, Prater, this is our video segment, so you can watch us here in the rowpaint.com studio as we bring on live from Las Vegas, BJ Rains with Bronco Nation News. This is kind of an earlier edition of our Bronco Nation News report. We'll do this again tomorrow at this time, but let's welcome BJ Rains to Idaho Sports Talk. BJ, how's Vegas been, man?
Doing pretty good, man. Appreciate you guys for having me on.
No problem. We wanted to talk about Hank Bachmeier this segment because I think, I don't know if I started this or not, but just I thought it was strange that Hank wasn't representing Boise State in Vegas for Mountain West Media Days, and then that Boise State didn't nominate him to be a part of the all-conference team. And just saying, I thought that was kind of interesting. You know, I think you said kind of the same thing, BJ. I know Prater has as well, but you were able to talk with Andy Avalos, yesterday? Or was that today, BJ? Yesterday. And got some pretty good information. So we just kind of wanted to talk about that. But first, I'll give you a chance real quick to share your thoughts on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw that he was not on the ballot, I was surprised by that. I thought that didn't make much sense. But then once I found out that Boise State's policy was, hey, if you're not at least preseason or, honorable mention the year before, you're not going to be on the preseason. And so you can say the policy stinks, and I think it's, pretty dumb. But if that's what they've done before, that's the way it is. And it's hard to argue with what they've done. So that one I thought was weird. But once they explained it, I said, okay, if that's your policy, that's fine. The one about, him not coming to media days, I really didn't read anything into it all. I just thought that was typical Boise State. Send the lineman, send the guy that's not going to say very much. He's a quieter guy. It just seems like the safer play, not have to worry about anybody saying anything controversial or whatever. And they know John's going to be a good interview and be respectful and say good things. And so I didn't think anything of it. And then I heard that it was, even more reason was because he was voted as the top leadership position on the team. And he was voted as the top offensive guy on his team. And now Hank was a close second, it sounds like. But when I heard that they took the two guys that had the top 2 votes, I again said, okay, I don't have a problem with that. So I going back and bringing in the fact that he didn't throw a pro day and a lot of that stuff, I just didn't think had anything to do with this. And so, it is what it is. And I know, some folks on social media took it and ran with it, and it was great fodder for a couple of days. But it sounds like Hank is focused and ready to go. And I think it was much to do about nothing.
Yeah, I don't know about that, BG. I'm going to be a little bit more skeptical than that. First of all, this policy, you kind of softened it. It does truly, truly, truly stink. It's a stupid policy. Media days are designed to promote your program, to build your program, to create buzz around your program, and you send your 4th-year starting quarterback. My bigger question here is to you, because you can answer this question. When was the first time you heard about this policy? Like 2 days ago? And they've been telling us that it always exists? I don't believe that for a second, BJ.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly possible to think that way. And I when I saw he wasn't on the list, I called and said, why wasn't he on the list? And that's why it was. So it was about a week ago or so probably that we found out. And they claim that's how they've always done it. As we're going to hear and see from Andy Avalos in a minute, he was pretty defensive and kind of said, well, why? When I said, is this becoming a big deal or whatever on social media? And he's like, well, why is that? Like he seemed all stunned. And when I started to explain the fact that it was something about the policy, and he's like, well, yeah, that's how it's been. And so I'm just looking into it. I just don't I don't know, Prater, you're good at that kind of stuff. Your instincts usually prove to be correct, and maybe there is something there. I just personally don't think there's some underlying thing going on with Hank Bachmeier, which, it was back-to-back days. It was a bad look where one day he's not going to media days, the next day he's not on the ballot. I get it. It's easy to kind of connect the dots, but based on everybody down here that's talked and folks I've talked to back in Boise as well, they see it as a non-issue, and they're surprised it's getting as much attention as it is. They think Bachmeier has had a great offseason, and they think he's in for a big senior year.
I do think, and I hesitate to use the word non-issue, but yeah, we've made a little bit of a mountain out of a molehill. We've talked about it because up until the last couple of days, we've had nobody to bounce this off of, no access to Boise State. So we're connecting the dots of what we know physically that's out there. The fact that they've cleared it up a little bit, certainly, yeah, Hank Bachmeier is going to be your starting quarterback until he can't, because he's either injury or performance, and I don't see that happening. I'm also on the record multiple times saying I think Hank Bachmeier and Tim Plow are going to have a monster season. So yeah. I think it's more of a concerted effort to simplify his mind, to clear up the clutter in his brain, to get this chip on his shoulder. I think it's a mental game that they're playing. They just don't want to talk about playing that mental game in public.
And that's fair, and I think that's certainly a possibility. I certainly think that's not having Hank down here in Vegas and parading him around and all that probably keeps him a little more focused, takes it off his plate. I don't disagree with that theory, and I think that's possible. But Boise State claims that John Ojukwu got more votes, and they just went with the top 2 vote getters. And if that's going to be their policy, that's fine. And before I even knew about that, I was telling people when I had folks over at my house. I think the night you both came over at different times the night. I said, I bet you they send John Ojukwu to media days. I just had a feeling that's the Boise State type thing to do. He's got the most starts on the team. He's a 6th-year guy, a veteran guy. It just made too much sense. They've sent Charles Leno before. They've sent John Molchon before instead of Brett Rippon. Like, it's just what they do is send the linemen down to media days, and maybe that's why. Maybe that's why, because they want to do this to clear his head, not have to worry about all this. I don't know. I didn't see it as having anything to do with anything like that, but certainly it's possible, and we may never know the true answer here.
BJ, why don't you roll that clip of you talking with Coach Avalos kind of on this topic yesterday?
There's a little bit of pushback, I guess surprise, when no one saw him on the preseason all-conference ballot. I guess it's just your guys. Yeah. You've done it in the past or something? I mean, is that's what it came down to, I guess?
Yeah.
And then for him not being here either, a lot of people thought he might be, the offensive representative. How'd you guys settle on OJ to be the guy to represent you?
That's who the team voted is. He got the most votes on the offense side of the ball for the leadership. So much like anything else, OJ Scott on defense got the most votes in terms of leadership. So rightfully so, those guys, not only in situations like this, but there's a lot of decisions that get made as a family within our team, and those guys, not only Scott and OJ, but this leadership group, but mainly those guys, they're heavily relied on for opinions or advice, or how should we do this? What do you guys think we should do? And this is just an extension of that. So that's how OJ and Scott, I don't think, we could read into all this other stuff, how we like to create that sometimes, but it's really nothing.
Well, that's what I was going to, it came out and it just happened to be back-to-back, and fans, were jumping on, Hank lost the locker room and all this kind of stuff.
No.
It just seems like it was just a coincidence that's how it happened, right?
Yeah, I guess it could be seen that way, but yeah, that's why we made it very clear. Like, these have been the two leaders. These are the two guys that have led us through the summer. Again, they're voted on by their peers, and Hank was right there with that too in the voting, if it makes any consolation to.
All right, BJ, you were there front and center, obviously asking those questions. Well done. Did Andy Avalos take care of any questions you think maybe you had, or any questions that you think maybe myself or Prater might have? Does that suffice for you, that answer?
I probably could have phrased the question a little better, and I probably could have asked more in terms of just from the Hank side of the distractions, and did that have anything to do with him not wanting to be down here? But again, when he claims it's because they voted on it, and those are the two guys that, I did get a text from a friend while that clip was playing, and I think this is still the issue that some people are bringing up on social media, is the fact that the bigger issue is that maybe your 4-year starting quarterback didn't get the most votes from the team on offense to be a captain or to be a leader. And so some folks are looking at that, but hey, I think it worked out well. I think, John did a great job down here. He was awesome. And I think that it was much to do really about nothing. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I maybe could have phrased the question a little better, but it was like the 8th hour of him talking and doing interviews, the very last question of the entire day. And I think he was ready to go back to Boise.
I think we can reach some kind of compromise here. I mean, we're not going to dispute what Andy Avalos is saying and how he runs his football team. That's a no-brainer. I do want him to change. I would like to see him change that policy. That's a ridiculous policy. I mean, if you're telling me, some scrub was an honorable mention, but he's eligible next year to do this. But your 4-year starting quarterback is not. It just seems like it's
one vote, Prater. One vote gets you honorable mention. By the way, all you need is one vote from one of the media or coaches the year before, and your honorable mention.
And that is an indictment on Hank Bachmeier. That's absolutely an indictment on Hank Bachmeier. I also would come back to you and say, and it sounds like the vote was close. Avalos said it, you said it, between Ojukwu and Hank Bachmeier. But man, we've been listening to Boise State coaches for 4 years do nothing but talk about the great leadership and the great representation that Hank Bachmeier applies to this football team. And he's not good enough to be your number one leader on offense as your 4-year starting quarterback. It just smells a little weird.
Huh. And I had to be careful there because I don't know if you saw in the background, but Ojukwu and Matlock were walking right by as we were talking about this. So I had to, I looked up at the last second. That's why I kind of threw in the John's doing a great job because he was standing right there. And he did fine and it all worked out. But your sentiment, Prater, is what I have seen on social media a lot. Yes. Why wasn't the 4-year quarterback? And again, we don't know if it was one vote. We don't know how that plays out. As I said, John Ojukwu, 29 straight starts. I think it's 36 career starts, the most of any player on the team. He's been there 6 years. I just, some people just, and fans and stuff like to find stuff to nitpick and get angry about on social media. I really think Hank, it seems like, is locked in and he's ready. And, because before that clip, the previous 5 minutes was Avalos talking about how great of an offseason Hank's had and how they feel good about where he's at. And with him and Tim Plow in year 2 is going to be a huge difference. And so I think that, based on everything they're saying, we're going to go into fall camp and he's as ready for a season as he has been.
The next piece of evidence that we'll kind of look at and attack because we're just, shallow media guys. What was Andy Avalos' policy with captains last year? Did he have offense, defense, special teams in a game? How did he pick captains last year?
Well, we don't even know for sure if this is quote captains. They're calling it he was
no,
the highest.
I know that. But
he was the highest.
But how did he pick captains last year?
I believe it was. They usually have 2 captains and then they add single game captains. And I think there's 2 other guys that get voted for a single game. At least that's how it had been in the past with Harsin. I'm trying to remember if they just had the 2 guys and that was it for captains last year. That's a good question. I should know the answer to that. But again, this is they call this leadership positions. Yeah. So I think they have some sort of like hierarchy amongst the players, their own kind of leadership group. And so we'll see when the official team captains come out. And I would suspect Hank,
he'll be a captain. Yeah.
If they only go 2 and those are the 2, I mean, then he won't be, but maybe it is something where they can add to that. And maybe if they walk by here real quick before we're done, I can ask them how they'd pick the captains, but
EJ,
I don't know.
I got a question here. And Andy Avalos, I like where he went with that. He did not have to tell you, well, this is what we did. The players voted for who was going to essentially represent us at Mountain West Media Days. He could have just said, oh, BJ, and he could have said whatever he wanted to. I don't want to say he put any gasoline on this fire, but Andy Avalos saying to you right there, hey, OJ got more votes. We sent OJ. If Hank would have got the most votes, we would have sent Hank down here, is essentially what I thought he said. He was candid with you, and he said, hey, OJ got the votes. Now all of a sudden people hear you, Andy, say that from you ask him. They say, whoa, why did OJ get more votes? OJ's a lineman. Hank's the quarterback. What's going on here? Like, Andy could have avoided that, and he didn't. Let me just throw that in there, too.
Yeah, and I think he was trying to calm folks down and may have made it worse.
Yes, yes, yes.
I think, by the way, I went back and looked at last year's UCF game notes. Kaniho and Shakir, you were right, BJ. Kaniho and Shakir were named season captains last year, and then they selected 2 captains on a game-by-game basis. So a defensive guy and an offensive guy. And if he does the same thing this year, that tells me your 2 captains for the 2022 seasons are going to be Matlock and Ojukwu, and your 4-year starting quarterback, who's been bragged about as a great leader on this football team, might be a captain for the San Jose State game.
That's crazy to think about, and that's what the fans are getting at, and that's what you're talking about, Johnny. That's probably I think he did it to kind of calm folks down and say there was no underlying message. There was no he's not in trouble. There's nothing else going on. And then it becomes, oh, well, so now he's not even the top offensive player as in terms of a leader, as a 4-year starter. What's going on? So I do think that probably wasn't his intended reaction to what he was trying to say when he tried to smooth things over there. But, he said, hey, if we try to make stuff of it, but he tried to blow it over and maybe made it worse. I don't know. But we'll see. I mean, I think he's clearly going to be the guy, August 3rd when they take the first practice. He's, all signs indicate to him and Tim Plow being in a great spot to move this offense forward. And there's been I know folks don't like to hear it, but there's been a ton of talk the last 2 days about how much of a difference the offensive line is going to make. Having KHG back, having Beresford. I mean, they feel like, without blaming a position or a player or an injury, they feel like that the offensive line was a massive reason for the struggles last year. And I really think it's going to be a bigger impact with that group hopefully being healthy and more improved than maybe some folks have given credit for.
This completely throws our theory, Prater, was Andy just doesn't want to add any more onto Hank's plate.
I still believe that theory,
but they just don't want to say, hey, we're not adding anything on Hank's plate.
Yeah, they didn't have to go with the two highest vote getters go to media days. I don't know if that's not usually probably the policy. Maybe it is.
I don't know, but
it's a convenient way to say it. I don't know.
I'm going to go on the record right now there. I don't think there's any type of controversy in that room with that position. I don't think Vidlak or Talon Green have even a puncher's chance of starting week 1. But it's been a fishy last couple weeks for Hank. That's all I'm going to say there. I still think he's going to be the quarterback of the team. He's starting week 1. These guys aren't going to beat him out. But, yeah, I mean, to think about this, I'll say one more thing, Prater. Every offensive player on that team had a vote, according to Coach Avalos there. And Hank didn't get the majority. Now, if you want to make something out of that, make something out of it. If you want to brush it under and say it's nothing, no, and then go in that direction too.
It's not nothing.
That happened.
It's not nothing. It's context. I'm writing it down. We'll see what happens down the road.
How many offensive linemen are there compared to other positions? Maybe OJ had more people voting for him in his room than other rooms. I don't know. I don't know if they picked for 1 or 5 or whatever. He said it was close. If one guy had to do it, that's fine. I heard next year they may bring 3 players per team to media days now, so maybe it wouldn't have been an issue. Who knows?
All right, BJ. Well done. Great reporting. We will talk to you again. Heck, 24 hours from now, you'll be back on our show. Lucky you.
Let's do it. Appreciate it, guys.
Great coverage down there. Bronco Nation News, their partnership with us here at KTIK, strong as ever. Appreciate you, BJ. Fair or foul? Things that happen to you almost every day in life. You make a decision. Is it a fair decision or is it a foul decision? I can tell you, BJ would probably be foul on both of these suckers. Appreciate you, BJ. Prater in the ball game. We come back soon.